Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, where we frequently describe the unusual activity when somebody thinks they know something. And in the case of Nvidia, knowing something could have been worth $300 billion. So you want to know what that was? Stay tuned. Bang! It's not an option. It's not an option to miss this show, and it's not an option to not understand options so that you can get leverage and you can define your risk on entry. We can tell you all about it, folks, by the way, at our mastermind event, October 11th, down in Aventura, Florida. Pete will be there. I will be there. Grant Cardone will be there. Larry McDonald will be there. Charlie Gasparino, the gas man, Pete, will be there. Mark Lopresti will be there. Larry McDonald. I mean, it's going to be an all-star cast. Ryan Mastro, Steve Kalasian, all for one day of live trading. And if you want to go, just call us up, 888-809-8058. That's 888-809-8058. All right, Pete. Bang. And that's Pete over there. Pete, ready to get rolling with a little macro minute today?
Yeah, let's rock and roll, man. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of macro and everything from politics to wars to whatever. I'm not at all.
Oh, yeah. And today, the macro minute, I'm going to say, Pete, is Asian markets continue to be weak. We talked about it. They didn't trade Monday, but they did, and they were weak. And now Japan's Nikkei is down more than 4%. Now, you might recall that August 5th, it was down double digits. It was down 10%. So it rebounded from there, but now it's kind of heading south again, Pete. That's why I'm saying the macro minute is what's going on in Asia.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think one other thing on the macro side is that ISM, it improved from July to August, but it was still below the forecast, which now all of a sudden, do we go a quarter, John, or do we go 50? And I can give everybody a little bit of a hint. It's getting a lot closer. It was lock, stock, and barrel a quarter, and we're looking at it now. You look at that the tool from the CME. Take a look at that thing. It's really, really close, John. Damn near 50-50, whether or not it's quarter point or 50. But we are starting to see some of that data come in, and we're starting to see a little bit more of a push as far as what's going on the rates and what Powell and them might do in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, right now, folks, it's 57% say a quarter cut, 43% say 50. I don't think we're going to get to 50, Pete.
Me neither.
I'd be happy to be surprised, because if it is just a quarter, I'm going to say it's a sell on the news event, Pete. If it's a quarter, that's priced in. If it's 50, that's a surprise. And I think a surprise is what the market needs to continue to the upside and keep hitting new records. All right. Fantastic futures, Pete. You talked about this one earlier in the year, but you know what? It is now at the lowest level since March. My fantastic future ain't fantastic. It's bad. And it is cocoa futures. They're down 5% today. And like I say, the lowest level since March right now.
Well, I'm going to go right to it, John, because it's important. I think people need to know more and more. So many people are clueless when it comes to the VIX. It's not their fault. It's most of the morons that come on television or radio or whatever that talk about the VIX and have no clue. They truly do not. Anyway, we popped all the way up over 23 this morning, John. A lot of concerns out there. We've been watching the markets around the globe and also in front of us as we were getting closer and closer. All of a sudden, we've started to see that volatility index start to seep back a little bit and a little bit. We're a little bit closer to 19 or 20 now. Makes a lot of sense. When you look at the movement that we've had, we are in basically a spot where the VIX it should be 16 or more, and that's where it finds itself. 23, probably not, unless we get the kind of a sell-off like we'd seen on Friday, the other day. we're down 600 points yesterday. Those were scary. Those are those kind of numbers, but the volatility index still is one of the best tools there is out there. It's a measure. It is not a fear gauge. It is a measure of how much movement to expect in the S&P, and that's exactly where it is right now at about 19 or 20, which pretty much is exactly where we should be right now.
I agree. Well, now we hit stocks, folks.
Yeah.
And we got to start off with Nvidia. Why? Well, because they wiped out $300 billion in market cap. And they did that like that. Why? Well, yesterday morning, Pete, they had unusual activity. They, whoever they are that buy these puts, were buying puts with the stock at 111. Then it comes out that they get charged, not formally, but the Federal Trade Commission says, you know what? There's some things that they're doing that aren't quite right. One of those things, Pete, that's, for instance, monopolistic is they threaten, apparently, this is the charge, that they threaten customers that if they switch from Nvidia to another chip, then Nvidia might not sell them the next round of great chips that they have, which keeps people, of course, holding on to those Nvidia chips rather than switching for a cheaper chip that they can get more easily. Well, that ain't good. And if indeed those facts hold up, I think Nvidia goes below 100, Pete. Now it bounced nicely from 105 back up to 108. We'll see if that holds.
Yeah, it actually got as low as 104, and then we get this pop back to 108. But this antitrust probe that you were just discussing, that isn't very impressive. That is something that could be very depressing, quite frankly, if indeed this thing goes a little further and they find out that that's exactly what was going on. That would be something pretty awful. Stock down, what, 12, 14% total, John, over the last 3 trading sessions, something like that. So is there some pressure on it? Yeah, 140 was the number. And it was the number pretty quickly after the split, actually, is when they got up in that 140 level. We haven't seen that in a while. We pulled back. Obviously, on August 5th, it was really back, but it immediately snapped. Right now, it snapped pretty good off of 104 back to 108. We'll see how things float, but this is something where this could get pretty nasty. So I think people just have to know that as a backdrop if they're trading. And I think that the options world provides you a lot better opportunities to have exactly in front of you what kind of risk you have if you're involved in this stock.
Yeah, if you want to own Nvidia, owning the stock at 125 didn't work out so well. Owning a call spread meant that you defined your risk and maybe you lost $2 and you kind of lick your wounds and move on. You go from 125 to 104, that 21-point drop, that'll leave a mark.
Yeah.
All right, Pete. This one will leave a mark too, but it's going to leave a mark on the shorts. And that is GitLab. Was up as much as 20% today. Software development platform. They raised their full year outlook. And when they did that, the stock popped 10%, 12%, as much as 20%. It's settled in right now at about a 17% rally, Pete. They're backed by Google. The second quarter results were better than analysts expected. There really wasn't anything bad about these results, which is why you get this double-digit jump.
Yeah, the recurring revenue that they've got, John, was up 19%. When you look at the revenue itself, up 31% year over year. I love the year over year number. I think that's far more critical even than just kind of beating what everybody's waiting for. I like to see growth, real growth, and that's what we've been seeing. They beat on the top and the bottom. This is about as pristine of a beat as you could get, which is why the stock was up as much as 21%. And we did have a little bit of unusual even today in this stock, very small paper. When I say small, folks, I'm talking about a couple of thousand, but nonetheless, somebody's out there that still thinks that this thing has a little bit more fuel in there to run a little bit higher. We'll see if that's the case, but this is a heck of a move, and this is a great move, and they absolutely capitalized on every part of what they needed to do. And I think that's what makes this so great. By the way, AI product demand, that's what really was boosting their sales. So another where AI is a really big deal.
Yeah, and we had unusual activity. I mean, so there, folks. Unusual activity, what does that mean? That means that somebody was in there, as you see on your screen, buying upside calls. And they were spot on. So when Pete and I talk about unusual activity, and by the way, nobody else does. You've got a whole bunch of people that want to think they're experts on volatility, or they want to say, well, unusual activity, it really doesn't mean anything. Yes, it does. Sort of like that one pitcher. I can't remember if it was Dizzy Dean or who it was, Pete, but he said, oh, it's an optical illusion, people used to say, that a curveball is really curving. No, it's not an optical illusion. And what he said was, okay, you go stand behind that tree and I'll hit you in the face with a couple balls that are going to curve right around that tree. And yep, it isn't an optical illusion. If that ball is curving or if the unusual activity is happening, when we talk about it, 9 times out of 10, it's going to play out into something big. All right, I got another for you. This one today, Dollar Tree. This was to the downside. They were buying downside puts, Pete. So also unusual activity for Dollar Tree. And what were they buying? Well, take a look. They're buying puts in here in Dollar Tree. They're buying the 65 puts with the stock at $83. So in other words, are they saying the stock is going to fall to 65? Not necessarily. Any fast movement lower means that these puts blow up. And maybe they only wanted to risk 20 cents, which is what they paid for these puts. But obviously, what Pete and I usually do is we tend to trade something closer to the money. And in this case, anything around that 80 level paid off huge, because this stock is down 20%, basically right down to where those puts are, Pete.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing sometimes. But not only that, and it made sense, John, going into this, because we've heard from some of these in that discount, sort of call it dollar store world, where they're struggling. Why are they struggling? Well, because of that move that people have made over the last couple of years, and it looks like Target and Walmart are the winners in this situation. Some of the losers are Dollar General, Dollar Tree. So I think that's part of it as well. Lower year over year is what they reported. That's not so good, John. When you look at the same store sales with gross that was, their growth was missed, that wasn't so good. The macro environment is starting to piece away and chew away at these guys at a bad pace. By the way, hit 52-week lows today of 64 before it popped a little bit off of that. So their guidance, that was lower. There was nothing about this report. Year over year, the numbers were missed. Nothing about it looked good. This is something where should you go in there because it sold off as much as it has? I would say, nope, just keep an eye on it. But nope, you need to wait. You need to find out over the next couple of quarters, can they bounce back? And so far, they're looking pretty beat up when you go across all these different dollar store types of retailers that are out there.
Yep. And keep in mind, folks, again, it's not an option. Did you want to short the stock at 83? Maybe you did. But if you shorted 1,000 shares, you had to put up 83 grand to buy some puts. Whether you bought those 20-cent puts or whether you bought a put that was maybe a couple bucks that might have been somewhere around the 70 or the 75 strike, you had a home run. And it's not an option to just trade stock. Works downside as well as upside. So check out the book. You can claim it for free at itsnotanoption.com. All right, Zscaler, Pete, another stock that's down 20% today. Cybersecurity firm said fourth quarter earnings and revenue were great. They were much better than expected. And yes, I'd be happy if I was working there or if I owned the stock. But then, as Columbo would say, well, there's just one more thing here. How's your guidance going forward? The guidance was terrible. They basically said, we're not going to earn anywhere near what you guys are thinking we're going to earn. And that's why people said, sold, with both hands out. What do you think of this one, Pete?
Yeah, it makes total sense, John, because of the fact that, yeah, they crushed. That's great. And that's exactly what you need to do. But you also need to be in a position where hopefully going forward, you're going to continue to do what you've just done in the previous quarter. That's not the case, as you just mentioned. The second they said anything about the forecast in a negative way, boy, were they running for the gates, John. They absolutely slammed out of there, down 20%. It pushed down as low as 160. It might have gotten even lower than that. a lot closer to the 52-week lows. It's not 52-week lows. Those were 146, but the highs were 260. We're a heck of a long distance from that. So a lot of analysts went out there and they said, you know what? We're going to have to cut these price targets that we've got on this because there's a real problem here. And the guidance gave us that problem. We need to shift as fast as we can. I'd love to have seen some of those guys have the knowledge to be able to see that going forward. They didn't, but at least they're giving us a time frame now where we can sit there and watch this for a little while, but it might take a while for this to recover, John, if it's anywhere as close as bad as the forecast was, which looked pretty awful.
It did. It did look pretty bad, Pete. And Zscaler is in a hot space, folks. Cybersecurity. That's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because look at what they did. They beat top line and they beat bottom line. Well, but the bad side of that is people get all pumped up about the future. And all of a sudden, when you slap them in the face and give them some reality, it doesn't look so great. All right. Let's talk about the University of Oklahoma, Pete, because they have a linebacker who gets some pretty good NIL money, name, image, and likeness. So what does that mean? That means, of course, that we all know Shedeur Sanders gets millions, about $4 million a year. I don't think this linebacker gets $4 million, but this linebacker really appreciates how lucky he is to be in this position, and he wanted to share some of that wealth, which is something I would certainly suggest for some of these other players. I'm not just pointing the finger at Shedeur, Pete, but I'm saying some of these other guys, they should be doing the same thing, because it's not just one guy. It's 11 men on the field for football. And if you don't have a great special teams, if you don't have, like Pete found out Saturday, if you have a kicker that's supposed to be so great and all of a sudden he shanks two of them and you don't win the game, well, it's still a team sport. So I think it's a great thing that this particular linebacker, Danny Stutzman at Oklahoma, did what he did. So let's take a listen.
The University of Oklahoma star linebacker Danny Stutzman showing everyone how to be a team player. So here's the thing. There's scholarship guys, and then there's walk-on. Scholarship guys, schools paid for, housing paid for, food paid for. Walk-ons,
this kid's a really
they have to
good
pay for their
kid.
own schooling.
Former
they have to
NFL
pay for
wide
their own
receiver,
food outside of what the team provides, and they have to pay for their own housing.
really well,
so the walk-on journey is an absolute struggle, and this starter, this leader of his team,
John,
decided to do something about it. Take a look at the speech he made to his teammates.
Other people need to know this. We were ahead of this. We talked about this last week.
But it really
We're
does.
a little ahead of Good Morning America.
Every single day we appreciate you guys. I feel like I have a really good connection with all you guys, and I just know how much you guys put into this program. And sometimes you think it's not seen, but it is. And so with that being said, I want to donate some of my NIL earnings to you guys, so you guys can have a little something else after the meetings. This will be in your lockers.
NIL is name, image, and likeness. And Stutzman says he will donate $50,000 of his name, image, and likeness earnings to these walk-ons on the team. The program announced this online, calling Stutzman a leader on and off the field.
John, that's what college football should be about. It should be about sharing, because you know what? A defensive lineman in front of that linebacker right there, he does the work. He does the hard work against the guys that are trying to get at that linebacker. And this guy appreciates not just that. He appreciates all these walk-ons that he's giving a portion of his money to. And I'll tell you, I remember last year, Tom Brady giving Shedeur Sanders a lot of flack, driving a Rolls Royce around campus after they were 3-0, then they were 3-1, 3-2, 3-3. They lost almost all the other games. They only won one more game to win 4 games. They basically damn near lost to North Dakota State last week, John. I mean, that was a close fight game where the North Dakota State threw on them, they run on them, and they lost by basically a score. So they were in the game, and we're talking about an FCS school. That does change things a little bit. Now they're going to Lincoln, Nebraska, my friend. I don't know about you, but I'd be a little bit nervous about this one. He needs to share that money with his offensive line is my point. Why wouldn't he be doing that?
I mean, when you look at it, Pete, in the pros, they frequently buy Rolexes. You know, a guy like Tom Brady might have bought Rolexes or something nice for his offensive linemen, because those are the guys that protect him. You don't have walk-ons in pro, of course, but he's taking care of the guys that take care of him. And they all get paid. Offensive linemen, in some cases, like in San Francisco right now, they make more than Purdy. They make 10 times what Purdy makes. But you've got to appreciate those guys and the sacrifices and the sweating. You know, when you're a 340-pound guy in the summer sun, it's a different deal than when you're wearing that red jersey and not getting touched. So anyway, I'll just kind of say that my hat's off to Danny Stutzman and any other player who is out there sharing some of that wealth, because that makes a lot of sense.
Class act team player.
Yep, that's a team player. Well, Pete, what else you got as far as sports today?
All right, we're going to start off with this one. We don't have to take too long on this, John, but I'm so excited because tomorrow we kick off the NFL season. And how do you kick it off any better? I got to give the commissioner props here because I'm critical, but I also want to give him props. In this case, the full props. Ravens Chiefs at Arrowhead. I mean, honestly, we're talking about likely, you know, the AFC's very best going head to head, right? And I think the difference maker here that makes it so cool to me is Derrick Henry. I love the fact that the Baltimore Ravens went out, got Derrick Henry. Now they've got a running back. They don't have to lean as much on the quarterback to run the football. He'll still run it. If somebody's not open, he's going to tuck it and run it. But I'll tell you what, Travis Kelce and these guys, they're in for a big one. And by the way, that defense last year, we always talk about how great the Baltimore defense is. They led the NFL with 60 sacks. We'll see how it goes on Thursday night, but that's a big one. And then you've got Green Bay going to Philly on Friday, all the way down in Brazil, trying to get this NFL all around the world, right? The interesting thing is Jordan Love a one and done? Did he just have an 8-game stretch last year? Did they pay him the right thing? We're going to find out.
Right. Well, and Pete, according to a computer program that runs 10,000 iterations, you know, in the Avengers movies, Pete, when Doctor Strange is sitting there going like that, and he's figuring out, okay, I just ran 10,000 simulations. How many times do the Avengers beat Thanos? Once. Okay, so that's what these guys do. They do a 10,000 round simulation, and here's what they're saying, Pete. They're saying the Chiefs -3.
Wow.
So in other words, they're saying the Chiefs at Arrowhead win by 3. 10,000 simulations, and they say the over/under 46.5. So there's no doubt both these teams can score, but in my mind, Pete, there's also no doubt that the Chiefs score more most of the time than the Ravens. Now, if the Ravens can shut them down and then they can pound the ball at them and keep the ball out of the hands of Mahomes, I think they could beat them. But otherwise, yeah, I got to say, I think the simulations are right. KC wins.
All right. I love it. All right. We got something else that's going on over the weekend, John. Saturday, Fox. We finally get a great game in front of us. By the way, the other day we were talking about Florida State and the fact that are they out of it completely? I said yes. But anyway, Texas playing at the Big House, at Michigan. I mean, you can't find better. You've got now an SEC team, formerly Big 12, going up against a Big 10 team that's got 18 schools, but they're still the Big 10. But anyway, so you've got Michigan. I'm going to say this. I think Ewers goes in there, the quarterback for Texas. I think he might light them up. You're missing your starting quarterback, your head football coach, your starting running back, different positional people as well, offensive linemen, tight ends, all of this stuff that went to the NFL. Michigan had a bunch of them. I think Michigan's going to have their hands full. I don't think they're going to be able to compete at that next level with Texas. What do you think? I think Texas beats them 24-14, something like that.
Well, I'm going to say, Pete, the computer is definitely also on the side of the Longhorns on this one. Now, Michigan, a lot of people bet against them last year, and all they did was win 15 games. It ain't the same Michigan team. Now, that's not to say that this quarterback's not great and they don't have great players. They do. But the odds are still only, what, 1 in 4 that Michigan can upset them. That's according to the computer models. So I'm with you, Pete. I think Michigan is a great team. They're going to have a lot of fans, of course, from both of these two schools. They have some of the best fans in all of college football, in Austin and in Ann Arbor. But I'm going to give it to the Longhorns as well.
Yep. I'm going to toss it out to our buddies at Wolverine Trading. That was they had a great year last year, but I don't think it's going to be as good this year as it was last year. They're still great. They're just not the same team.
7.5-point favorites, folks, going into the game, and total points 42.5. So obviously a lot different than pro. And they're not saying that whether it's Ewers or if Manning gets to play, that they're not going to put up as many touchdowns as they did in the spring game. All right. Well, folks, thanks for joining us. Pete and I will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. We'll be broadcasting from the Cardone Studios in beautiful Aventura, Florida. And again, if you'd like to come to our mastermind event, just go to marketrebellion.com/mastermind. That's marketrebellion.com/mastermind, October 11th in Aventura. Bang! See you tomorrow.